Welcome to Letters from America, a road trip podcast searching for the Swedish heritage in the United States. I'm your host, Martin Wern, and today I've parked a Volvo in Salt Lake City in Utah. And with me in the Airstream is Lars Ronér, or Ronér. Ronér?
Ronér.
Ronér. This is going to be an interesting episode because you and we just started talking yesterday. And there is a reason that I found this sort of subject that we're going to talk about very interesting, because I'm searching for the Swedish footprint within the United States. And in Utah, and specifically in Salt Lake City, there's a footprint from the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. Mormons, is that okay to say?
Yeah, that's what we used to be called, but that's fine.
Yeah. And from 1850, if I got the numbers right, to about 1910, 1920, somewhat 10,000 people from Sweden came to this area and settled here, either to join the church or to sort of move their faith here to this place. And in a way, you are part of that because your family came a little bit later, if I'm understood.
Yeah, 1948.
94, but it's still sort of the essence of that wave, right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that, about your family, and I want to talk about if you know why this place. So do you know why the church sort of settled here?
Yeah.
Can we start there?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make that a synopsis because it's kind of a long story.
We got time.
Okay. The church was reorganized in Palmyra, back east. And due to a lot of persecution, they started moving west.
Yeah.
And then they started a place called Nauvoo, which in the 1850s became one of the biggest cities in Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
And the persecution became so bad.
Even in this country here.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible. In fact, there was, in one of the towns, the mobs actually killed a lot of Latter-day Saints. It was quite brutal. They burnt their homes. They were mobs. They mobbed. So Joseph Smith, who reorganized the church, tried to move out as far as he could. He was planning to bring them out to Salt Lake City. Yeah. But he was martyred before he could do that. And so Brigham Young, who then became the leader of the church, moved all the saints from that area. During that period of time, the church started with 6 people in 1930 and grew into hundreds and hundreds of thousands really quickly. And they were migrating very steadily into America, into these different places. And it became very political.
But you meant 1830, right?
Yeah, I meant 1830. Right, 1830. But it became very political because the Mormon community became a very strong faction.
Yeah, exactly.
It. Yeah,
it grew very quickly.
It grew very, very quickly. And Joseph Smith, because of the persecution, then put himself on the ballot to run for president of the United States. Became even more political because he lived in a slave state, and he was anti-slave.
Oh, yeah.
So
high tension.
Yeah, so a lot of times they've said, well, Joseph Smith was killed by the martyrs because of his faith. The reality is he was killed most likely because of his political standing. And the part of the mob that was a part of it were people who were running against him for his platform. Oh, yeah. It was really strongly anti-slavery, and he was in a slavery state, so they didn't want that. Yeah. So long story short, so then Brigham Young took over, and they had to flee. They had to flee at night across the Missouri, and it was like with what they had on their backs. Okay, so then they when they crossed the Missouri and they went a little farther, they built a place called winter quarters, where all the saints who had come over came and stayed there that winter. And so what they did then, they were going west, but they weren't sure where they were going. So Brigham Young, I don't know how long it was anyway. They came to this valley, right? And when this is the place monument up here. And that's when he got here, because in a vision he saw the valley and he said, this is where we're going to stay.
So this was really the frontlining way towards west.
Yeah. Yeah.
almost as far as you could go at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what Brigham Young did, he's been called the Moses of this dispensation or time, because what he did was he colonized the West. He basically colonized Las Vegas. He colonized parts of Idaho, Montana, California. All of the West, he sent out. And the other factor was polygamy became a big issue in the church for various reasons. And so, anyway, so he started all of these colonies throughout the West, and the Utah territory was huge. The other thing was, because of the Book of Mormon, and without getting into it, there was, the Indians were called Lamanites in the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon talks about their heritage in South and Central America. So the church had a real tie to the Indians too here. They proselyted to them back. And in those days, there was Indians everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so when they got to the valley, they befriended the Indians.
Who were living here already.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And out by Utah Lake, there was a lot of Indians, so Brigham Young made friends with them. So when they first got here in the winter, it was really hard for them. Because,
well, I can imagine that, yeah.
So they brought their wagons, they would take the wagons on their side against the wind, and then they would stay there until they could start building cabins to do that. The church's history has been real interesting, because Utah then had this big influx of people migrating. And then the church started a program where if you were coming from Europe, they would help you fund your travel over. You'd have to pay it back, but they would basically say, well, if you want to come, we will fund your coming, because they were trying to do is build a strong core for the church here, because they had been persecuted. They came here and they said, no one wants to live here, right?
Yeah.
So they...
that's interesting. I never thought that. That's... you sort of go as far as you can go to be left alone in a way. Yeah.
Right.
And if I understand correctly, and I read about it a little bit also, the journey that they did is quite astonishing, especially in the early days, like 1850, 1860, something like that. They went from Sweden to Denmark to Germany to England, and then across England, and then a ship, maybe down to Louisiana, up the Mississippi, and to Kansas City. I don't know really where they jumped off that Mississippi riverboat, and in most cases started walking. Yeah. Towards here, a journey that could take a year almost to get here. Exactly. And the dedication to do that is quite astonishing.
Well, yeah. The other thing too, when they came here, a lot of them would come from Liverpool too. Yeah. And they would come here to the States. Like in my ancestry on my wife's side of the family, there were people who came. They got on their boats. They were pregnant. The children died on the boat. Yeah. There's one that as they migrated to Salt Lake, cholera broke out, so a lot of the men died. So when they showed up in the valley, a lot of times it was young girls by themselves, have lost all their family. Yeah. And
it's a totally different group when you get there.
Yeah. And so a lot of them, the old timers said, well, was it worth it losing? And they said, because of my belief and what I think, yes, it was worth it. So from that point of view, but the West has been settled by the church, and a lot of times some of the and I'm referring back to it, because the church became a very strong arm and sort of unified in this political position, became a real problem for the opposition.
But these things tend to, when something grows big, it grows strong, right? And then it turns into a threat almost to people who don't like that change. Yeah. The church's history has been really interesting here, because when they came here and they settled it, the government sent in an army called Johnson's Army to basically take Brigham Young was the governor, not make him take it away from him. Oh yeah. And so Brigham Young had all the saints put wood in their homes, and if the army came in, he would burn the whole valley. He would burn the whole valley down. Rather than sort of give up. Oh, and they said, well, we can go up in the mountains and we can fight. But it all worked out pretty good. The government said, okay, we'll back off. And
I think he finished his term, and then they put another governor in there. And it all has to do with polygamy, okay? And so polygamy became an issue. In fact, the government confiscated most of the church's money and buildings to basically, stop polygamy. Well, there was a reason why they practiced polygamy, and everybody didn't practice it. That's a fallacy. It was very few people. The percentage, very few.
Was that in an objective perspective, that is what people think about your church even today.
Exactly.
So
and they don't realize it was like 1849, 1860 that they abolished it.
Yeah.
And the prophet at the time of the church said that he said through Revelation that for the church to prosper and do well, we have to abandon this, which made a lot of people who are practicing polygamy very angry because they have suffered so much to practice it. And it was something they didn't want to practice because the percentage that practiced was very, very small. You get Europeans coming over and they say, I don't want to practice polygamy.
No.
And they weren't forced to. It was like, if you wanted to, that's fine. As a community.
But when did it stop? Was that a decree from the church to stop it?
Stop it, yeah.
Okay.
Totally. And if you practice it, you would be excommunicated.
Oh.
So you couldn't, that was it. So,
and when was this? Just to clarify. I'm not here to dig into that.
No. I'm just trying to remember. I think it was probably just around statehood, around 18, because they wouldn't give them statehood until then. They were statehood, I think, in 1846 or something like that. And so it was like around that period of time, or 49, somewhere around that period of time. So they said, you can't do it. Now, some of the members of this is nitty gritty and no one really cares, but some of the members didn't want to, and they fled to Mexico and started a branch that's known as the Reorganize the Church, because the church says you cannot practice this anymore. And the unfortunate
so they left and started their own version of that. Really.
Yeah, exactly. So the sad...
But that happens still today, right? That people do, I'm not saying polygamy, but, that they leave and start their own...
Yeah, but I think that happens in every religion.
Yeah.
You sort of have your own opinion about doctrine or your opinion about who's leading the church, and you may disagree with his opinion. So... and that's been happening since the beginning of time. I mean,
it has, and that's actually. I wasn't sure if I was going to open that door really, but to talk about religion in a way that, on an objective level, there are so many different churches that all of them see Jesus as their Savior and Christ, right? But there's so many differences in the. To simplify, in the fine print, in a way.
Yeah.
So sometimes I wonder, I can't talk for everybody, but I wonder if wouldn't it be better to just agree on the Savior instead of...
I think what happens is because the Bible has been interpreted by so many, and some people say we aren't Christian, even though we believe in Christ, and the difference is. Most like if you take the Catholic Church and Baptist Church and that, they take the Bible, take Christ from the Old Testament, Jehovah, and in the Old Testament he could be quite brutal, right? They had these Nicene creeds during the Reformation and that, where they try to define Christ, they try to define God in their own mind. So they basically said he was here, he wasn't here, he doesn't have a body, he does have a body, because he was so big they couldn't define it, okay? So the difference with us is when Joseph Smith had that vision, he saw that God the Father and Jesus Christ and the Holy Ghost are three separate beings, okay? And
so he never saw them as one, as the...
They're two separate beings, because the Holy Ghost is a spirit. But he saw that Jesus Christ and God the Father were two separate beings, right?
Okay.
And one of the reasons that Joseph Smith said, what church should I join? And God said, right now, all the doctrines aren't correct. And he says, in a nice way, saying, I'm upset that I've been interpreted the way I've been interpreted, because I'm a God of love, not a God of violence, not a God of fear. So,
but that's, in a way, like you said, in the Old Testament, that's a different God. In the New Testament is the forgiving God. In a way.
Exactly.
He who turns the other cheek.
So the whole right now for the whole messages for the churches is mostly to make your life happy, to make your marriage happy, you know, that you're not going to be punished and burned for making mistakes, because that's part of the process to learn.
Yeah.
You know, so do that. But anyway, I didn't want to go off on a tangent on that.
No, but you know, it's interesting, and like that. But that would also be a different podcast series.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure. But I mean, you asked. So I'm trying to say how the evolution came that they ended up here. Okay.
Yeah.
They wanted to be left alone.
Yeah.
They wanted to practice their religion.
But that is, you know, that's one. It's a thing that sort of comes over me on this trip that I'm doing, and it's a bit hard to explain. But I travel on these desolated places. There's just a highway, or there's just a valley, or there's a peak, or there's something, and I can't stop myself from thinking that. Imagine coming here for the first time, carrying something on a horseback or whatever, and it's sort of nothing.
No.
And
I have a story for that.
Yeah, but this is, like you said, to move. It explains if you feel that you're persecuted,
Right.
You go to the sort of edge of the world, which was here, because then you got a lot of mountains, a lot of desert. I know, because I come from that, I come from that way, and so I can see that these places.
If you take the 20s and 30s and 40s in the West, you know, even L.A., I mean, there was nothing there, right?
Yeah.
When my grandparents came 3 or 4 years after my parents came, my grandfather, they were pretty well off. My grandma won the Swedish lottery.
Oh, yeah.
And my grandfather worked for the railroad in those days. And he came to Midville. In 1948, there was nothing in Midville.
Yeah.
He told my grandmother, "Don't unpack. We're going right back." And my grandmother said, no. My grandmother was very strong belief in the church. She said, "No, we're staying."
Because I want to talk about that. Because on your shirt here is that famous horse from Dalarna.
Yes,
on your hat is the Swedish flag.
Right.
And I know that you just told me you came back from Sweden yesterday. Can we talk about, you told me about your mother and your father and your grandparents that came here. Can we take, how did you end up here?
Okay, my parents got married in 1945. I was born in 46, right? And
we're in Sweden now.
Yeah. I'm in Sweden right now. And so my dad was an artisan in Sweden, and my mom was a housewife in Sweden, right? And so she decided and told my dad, she said, maybe we should go to America, because a lot of their friends had left to go to America, right? So the process in those days was my dad and mom had to find someone here in Utah that would sponsor them.
Oh yeah, because I want to ask that the wave of that movement that we talked about, and that had sort of, because you had two wars in between,
right?
Yeah, so that wave must have sort of faded out in a way.
It faded out in the 50s.
It faded out, so this is just before the fade out.
Yeah, because the church...
There was still a movement in the early 40s of...
Oh yeah, 30s and 40s. The church...
To come here.
Was saying, if you're baptized, hop on a boat. Come to America and help make this a stronger process.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I think one of the problems was they took a lot of great leaders in the early days and brought them here, which left the church a little bit weaker in Sweden.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Of course.
Yeah. So, go ahead. So for me, my parents, I was just a little guy. And so they found a sponsor here in Holiday, of all places, a farmer who had a lot of property. And in those days, you had to prove you weren't taking someone else's, an American person's job.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so he sponsored them. So they hopped on the Gripsholm boat, and they came to America through Ellis Island. My mother had pneumonia as a child and had a spot on her lung. And they thought maybe it was TB, and they weren't going to let her in. And some miracle, she got in.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they
did like a health exam.
Oh, and Ellis Island.
Oh yeah.
You didn't get through Ellis Island if you had.
That's like a proper health exam too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Ellis Island was. In fact, my kids are surprised that because Ellis Island stopped a few years after. Doing that. So then what they did is they hopped a train to Chicago. And they had a relative...
So there was no riverboat from New Orleans up on the train?
No, they took the train.
The modern way of moving.
Yeah. So they hopped a train, they went to Chicago, and then they had a relative there, or my dad had a cousin there who had a really flourishing business. And he said, here, take my business. And my dad was so anxious to get to Salt Lake, which my mother has been kicking him for years, about we could have stayed instead of going to Salt Lake and struggling like dogs to start with. So then they came. Then in those days, you came into Salt Lake by train down the Union Pacific down here. And there was a few Swedes who had been in the church that had come and anyway helped them. So they
had sort of family or friends at least.
Not very many.
No, okay.
Okay. This guy that sponsored them put them up in a garage. Okay. So for a few months they lived in a garage.
Yeah. Well, that's the roof.
With nothing, So then in the early parts, my dad being an artisan, getting a job in Salt Lake, just it wasn't that kind of environment.
No.
So he had to take what he could. And I remember as a little kid, my mother would make, creamed carrots. We were on welfare for a while to sort of, for my dad to get a job, because in 1940, especially in the winter of 1948 when they got there, it was pretty bleak around here, And in Midvale from Salt Lake was like a half-hour drive on a dirt road.
Yeah.
It was very, very, very different,
Extremely different, yeah.
But for my dad, it worked out pretty good because he was an artisan. They had the big temple and the tabernacle here and all of that, and they needed some work done, and they found out that he painted. So when they changed the air conditionings in the temple, he came in and started retouching the murals. Then he was I don't know if you know what a wood grainer is. That's here. The wood that they had came from pine trees, so it was all just soft wood.
Yeah.
So they would paint it like hardwood.
Oh yeah.
So it was. Like,
I know that.
Graining. Yeah. So my dad could grain. Also, he could take the pillars in the tabernacle and make them look like marble.
Yeah.
So all of that my dad did do. In fact, on my dad's side of the family, they're all farmers from central Sweden, Örebro and that place.
All right.
And my dad's...
That's pretty close where I grew up.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe...
Pretty close.
Maybe you know this. His great-grandfather, for many generations, owned land. So he was a very, very rich farmer.
Okay.
And he had... I wish I could remember that. Anyway, the property they had was by a lake. It was huge. And they had little surf houses where people who basically would help them, right? And so he gambled it away. He lost all of it. So my grandmother and her sister had to go work in a sweatshop when they were 10 years of age.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was very hard. My grandmother and her sister became very, very, very bitter, right? Yeah. So it was really hard for them.
Were they part of the church in Sweden at this time?
Yeah, not her sister. My dad's mother joined the church when she was, like maybe 20 years of age. And then she got married, and then her husband joined the church. And my grandmother's grandfather was in charge of the royal stables in Stockholm.
Wow.
Yeah, not that that's you're in charge of the stables. Oh, that's not a big deal.
No, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, so he's buried. In fact, I tried to find his burial place because he's buried somewhere in the royal cemetery because in those days, taking care of the horses was a big deal. Yeah. So anyway, her mother joined the church.
Oh, okay.
And then she joined the church. So,
and you,
huh?
You what do you do here?
Oh, okay.
Because okay. That was the beginning of this episode.
Okay, let me tell you.
That we just met.
Yeah.
You're a Swede, sort of back and forth. I know. I can tell by the flag.
Yeah. My dad taught me that everything came from Sweden.
Everything.
All great inventions came from Sweden. Yeah. In fact, the first time I took my wife to Sweden, I made her get on the ground and kiss the ground.
Oh, really?
And she did begrudgingly.
Yeah, all great things come from Sweden.
I know.
Yeah.
My kids couldn't wait to get back there. And when I was back there, I was saying, here's some stuff that just came from Sweden. But I grew up in Salt Lake, so I went to traditional junior high school, elementary, and high school here. Then when I finished my high school, I was 19 years old. I went on a mission to Sweden. So I was there from 65 to 68. And I spent most of my time on the west coast of Sweden. I was in Lidingö for a while, but then I was in Göteborg, Helsingborg, Varberg. I spent a lot of time in Malmö, So I spent a lot of time in Sweden. As a missionary, I was pretty successful considering how hard it is. Because the Swedish people, bless their hearts, I'm always amazed, okay? Like my dad said, they were the freest democratic people in the world, right? Mm-hmm. And even though I still can't figure this out, they're taxed very heavily, but they have their apartment, they have a stuga, they have cars or 2 cars, they travel. I was just with an uncle of mine a few weeks ago. They just had a baby, so he gets off a year and a half. Which that's great. Yeah. So anyway, I got really indoctrinated in that. So then when I came back from Sweden, I went to the University of Utah for a short time. Mm-hmm. And then I met my wife, and she said, let's go to San Francisco. So I finished my schooling at the Art Academy in San Francisco. So I was, that was in 1970, right? When San Francisco was very different in 1970.
That's the flower
Love
power.
Child, yeah. Yeah, we were there when all that was happening. In fact, we lived about a block and a half from Haight-Ashbury.
Oh, yeah.
From Golden Gate Park.
Yeah,
so we were right into it.
All I hear is the musical Hair in the background. Yeah.
When I had hair, it was down to here. Oh, yeah. Had a big handlebar mustache in the 70s, right? And, bell-bottom pants, the high shoes.
The whole
works.
The whole shebang.
I lived it. Before I finished the Academy of Art, they hired me to work at J. Walter Thompson, which for me was a big deal because in San Francisco, to get in the ad agencies, you needed to spend a year or 2 in New York, or they weren't interested in you.
Okay.
They wanted you to get broken,
get schooled and
broken, really in New York. So I had a pretty good portfolio. So I got hired by J. Walter Thompson, and this is a funny story. So when I got to J. Walter Thompson, there weren't computers, right? So I started. I started right before Christmas, and they hired me. So I came in after Christmas, and the whole creative department was gone. And I said, "So, am I hired?" They said, "You're hired." I said, "Where are they?" They all got fired. I said, "Why?" The guy in charge in Chicago hated the creative director, and anybody who knew him, he had the power to fire them. But my paperwork hadn't gone through to Chicago, so they didn't know I was there. So I was there. So very little experience. I was a creative director for 6 months, knowing nothing. I was sweating bullets all the time. Yeah. They brought the guy in to be the creative director who was a speechwriter for Nixon.
Oh, wow.
So, okay.
This is really the 70s in a way.
And so for me, a guy taught me the lesson, a great lesson. He was a Jewish art director, really talented. He says, "Lars, you don't want to spend any time here. Stay here for a year, go to another place in a year. Because every time you're going to be a junior if you're here for 5 years. You're just going to be." Yeah. He said, if you get the next job, they're not going to know where you were. Then you're going to get another job, and they're not going to know where you are. So within about 2 years, I became a creative director at Foot, Cone and Belding. Yeah. So I did TV commercials in the 80s and 70s. I did a lot of stuff for Levi's. Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. In fact, I had a lot of.
You're the guy who did the thing with the pants in the refrigerator?
No. I did commercials when I started were running anywhere from $25,000 to $75,000. Yeah. In 1976, I think, I did a commercial for $1,400,000 for Levi's, which was over the top. Yeah, and what we did was, it was called Walking Dog. In those days, computers were just starting to come to life, right? Mm. When you would do, like, I'd go down to LA and I'd find guys that are underground doing crazy stuff, right? And they would put these computers on a roller, and it would shoot as it would move, and it would animate as it would move. Oh, yeah. And that's how it created animation. Oh, yeah. So I did a lot of, it was called Walking Dog. It won all kinds of awards. It was really quite popular because we were inventing cameras. Yeah. In fact, my boss called me in and he said, "I see a bill here for $50,000. Can I see the camera?" I said, "I don't have it yet."
I don't have it yet. We haven't invented it yet.
No, yeah. So
we're working on it.
Yeah, so we were inventing stuff as we went. Yeah. And I saw the evolution of advertising from the 70s until I started my own company, just do a whole evolution. When I started my agency in San Francisco, I had the first computerized electronic agency in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
That's
very early to do that.
All the big agencies had art directors like me who did not know how to use a computer. And they did TV, right? Because that's where the money was for them, you know? And then all of a sudden, I hired some guys out of LA, underground guys, because you couldn't go to school.
What do you mean by underground guys?
Meaning they were not on the radar. They were doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, you know?
In the basement somewhere.
And inventing stuff and, you know, on drugs half the time, you know? I brought these guys up. I brought two of them up in particular, because you couldn't go to school and say, teach me how to do this. We had a little SE that was about this big, right? And the guys would come in the morning and unscrew it, tap it, and play with it. And then they'd get a big bowl of popcorn, right? And they'd run it because it would take 20 minutes for it to produce artwork, right? I bought a color printer for $30,000.
Yeah, that's just crazy at that time.
Well, what's crazy, too, is the film that you put in it was $800 a roll.
Yeah.
And I told the guys, stop practicing.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop practicing. When you're done, do it. I mean, it was gorgeous what they did.
Yeah.
So I did that.
That's just a total different reality back then.
Oh, yeah. I remember when fax machines came.
Yeah.
We went out dancing on the street.
Yeah.
We thought, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. You know? We don't have to go to meetings.
No.
We can just send stuff to where it needs to be.
So...
I'm sorry.
No. This is lovely. This could be an episode in itself. Sweden. That's why we're here. You know?
Right.
Is there a Swedish way to do advertising in America?
Actually, the Swedes are very good.
Yeah.
They're very good.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
I think...
Very stylistic in a way.
Yeah, they are. And the art directors in Sweden have always been top-notch. In fact, I think the graphics that Sweden does for a long time has really, really been good.
My impression is also that Sweden plays a lot with comedy when it comes to advertising.
Yeah.
They like to do it.
That's the secret.
Yeah.
Doing commercials, two things. Identify with something that somebody has experienced in their own life, which is really hard.
Yeah.
And put a humor to it, a twist. Like I won a bunch of Clio's awards, and I don't mean to brag about it, but all the stuff I did was in those awards was something that you could identify with and say, oh crap, I've done that. You know, and you'd smile about it, right? And so the Swedes are right.
Yeah.
And the thing is with advertising, simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. So somebody doesn't have to think about it very hard. And they'll remember it. Yeah. They'll remember it. It used to be you would see like 13,000 new images every day. New images you never saw before. So what are you going to remember? Yeah. So the goal is do something that is tasteful, memorable, and humor does it. I'll say that thing about the Swedish people. They are very big-hearted, you know, and they're very generous. They really are.
Yeah, thank you.
If you become a friend of a Swede, it's hard to break it, but when you break it, you're in. Yeah. You're in. You know?
I would say so. It takes a while.
Yeah. You know, when I used to go tracting, which means I'd go door to door to proselyte.
Is that what you do when you on a mission?
Yeah. Which is hard.
I can imagine. You're quite young when you do that
19.
Also.
19, 20, 21.
Yeah.
And so proselyting, I didn't enjoy, but I did it. And it was funny, like if the door would open, you had to get kind of creative about how you did things, right?
Maybe that's how your creative career started.
Because they'd either slam the door in your face, and I got to the...
Maybe that's a point. I mean, you found a way to... Well, please, I interrupted you, but, you know, to sort of catch the attention. So
what I did was, with my companion, I would take a tape recorder, right? So when the door opened, there would be music. And I'd have a picture of a family, and I'd say, you want to be happy like this family? They would talk to me. And the other thing I loved was I said, oh, it smells good. Oh, come on in. And we'd have stuff to boot.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have great memories, and I have some, and what do they call it? Ragars?
The car. It's like they like old cars.
No, not raggar. It's like gangs.
Yeah.
Raggar gangs, right?
Like rockers, you know.
Yeah. So when I went on my mission, there was a lot of them, you know. Yeah. And we looked weird because we had hats on, you know, and so it was like great targets.
Didn't you have a suit on?
Yeah, you have to have a suit, white shirt and tie.
Yeah. And the name tag also.
Yeah, and now you don't have the hat, which I could have done without.
Yeah.
But anyway, learning process, but I'll tell you what bottom line is. I fell in love with the Swedish people.
That's very nice to hear.
Oh, it is.
I got one final thing, and I do this in all the episodes. There's a map on the table here.
Yeah.
I would say that Utah is somewhere, because you got Denver here.
Right
Utah
there.
is somewhere around
right
here.
there. You're right
Yeah.
there.
And your family is from the southern part of Sweden, was that right?
No, they're from Stockholm.
They're from Stockholm, yeah.
Stockholm, Uppsala.
Stockholm is there. And we're here.
Yeah.
And you lived in San Francisco for many years.
Yeah.
Where is home? Is it?
Yeah.
Could you write your signature here?
No,
That was surprising.
No, it's home. You know, when I went back this time, I can say this without crying. I listened to the people talk, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, my Swedish was coming back because I could identify with what they were talking with. When I got there, it was, I had to struggle to think about it. And in 10 days, I told Becky, my wife, I said, if I was here for a month, I could get my Swedish language back. But I love the Swedish people.
Because I got a follow-up question.
What?
If you were to write a letter from where you are now to home, what would you say?
Let me understand that. Write a letter?
If you were to write a letter from where you are now, which is Salt Lake, to home, what would you say?
What would I say to home?
No, in that letter, what would you write?
Oh, I don't. I have to think about that.
Well, we got time.
Yeah. I'll go back to what I just said. The thing that I discovered when I went back, and I have forgot because I've been gone so long, is how much I really do. It's like if your parents die and your family dies and you don't speak Swedish anymore to them, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by everybody who's speaking Swedish, that's home.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
That's home.
Yeah.
I could understand them. I could recall my aunts, my grandmothers. I could understand dialects. And I said,
Did that also evoke more memories when when you heard the language? So it's like opening the memory box in a way.
Oh yeah, I would say it is sweet. It is Sweden, San Francisco second.
Yeah.
Because I raised my family there.
Yeah. Lars, it's been a pleasure.
Tack så mycket.
Talking to you. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm really happy that you took the time to come over.
Well, thank you. I hope I haven't said anything to butcher myself.
No. I'm going to edit.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
Thank
you for coming.
No, I'm fine. Now my wife is going to grill me.
You have listened to Letters from America, a weekly road trip podcast celebrating the Swedish heritage in the United States. Produced in collaboration with the Embassy of Sweden in Washington, D.C., Volvo Cars USA, Volvo Trucks USA, and Airstream.